All right, futures are green here ahead of Wednesday's open and the FOMC meeting. S&P 500 futures up 0.26% ahead of the open. Dow futures up 0.13% and the NASDAQ up 0.43%. So green arrows across the board ahead of the open here, but that's likely to change when we actually do open. Let's go ahead and take a look at some cues from last session. Sectors gaining on Tuesday included consumer discretionary and information technology, which bucked an otherwise negative market trend. Real estate, utilities, energy stocks recorded the biggest losses as most S&P 500 sectors fell. President Trump hinted that he expects to lower fentanyl-linked tariffs on China, a potential major concession ahead of a high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea this week. Investors await the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee decision to cut interest rates by 25 basis points on Wednesday afternoon. The CME Group's FedWatch tool projections show markets are pricing in a 99.9% likelihood of the Federal Reserve cutting the current interest rate later today. Meanwhile, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta are all slated to report quarterly earnings after the closing bell here today. Additionally, the 10-year Treasury bond dipped below 4%, yielding 3.99%, and the 2-year bond was at 3.5%. We do have some stocks in focus here today. Some of them are going to be the big earnings reports that we're waiting on later today. Alphabet, that rose 0.67% in pre-market on Wednesday as analysts expect it to report earnings of $2.32 per share on revenue of $99.64 billion after the closing bell here today. Meta is our second stock on the list. That was up 0.47% ahead of its earnings, slated to be released after the closing bell. Analysts expect $8.11 per share EPS on revenue of $57.21 billion for the quarter. Microsoft rounds out our list of stocks that's looking to report after the bell here today. They advanced 0.39% and are looking for $2.97 per share on $10.61 billion of revenue. Teradyne, ticker TER, this is also on our list here today. Teradyne surged 20.91% after the chip testing equipment provider delivered better than expected third quarter earnings along with a robust outlook. This is interesting here, right? Chip testing equipment provider. This is our picks and shovels play for the semiconductor industry. They surged 20.91%. EPS of 85 cents beat the 79-cent estimate, and sales of $769.2 million beat the estimate of $743.77 million. Seagate Technology rounds out our complete list here. That's ticker STX. Shares climbed 7.17% after the company released its first quarter earnings report, beating expectations on the top and bottom lines. Seagate had an EPS of $2.61, which beat the $2.37 estimate, and sales of $2.629 billion, which beat the estimate of $2.545 billion.